Welcome to Liverpool FC Journal pod, guys. I'm Aaron James. This is your Liverpool news update. Wow, it's weird, isn't it? The international break is still ongoing, and look, we've got some news about the international break. We'll talk a little bit about one of the big stories that coming out of last night's fixtures, which involves German international Florian Wirtz, a man who's coming for an inordinate, that's not even a word, is it? Inordinate, that's the word I'm looking for, amount of criticism from opposition fans and the media alike. Obviously the price tag, which, is not his fault. He didn't pick the price tag. It is what it is. We'll talk a little bit about him. We're obviously going to talk as well about the transfer story that broke yesterday, and try and get a bit more news on that transfer story that broke, involving Antoine Semenyo, a player linked with a move to Liverpool in the January transfer window. Surprisingly, it was originally thought that no transfer move would come until the summer, but it appears that Bournemouth would be powerless to stop Antoine leaving the club. We'll talk a little bit about that one. Right, let's just talk a little bit about, obviously, this Antoine Semenyo story. It's pretty mad. Antoine Semenyo, obviously, he's done phenomenally well in the Premier League this season. 11 appearances, 6 goals, 3 assists, 9 goal contributions in 11. He's played 12 games in total for Bournemouth this year, including an EFL Cup game. Like I said, he's got 9 goal contributions. Fantastic, both-footed player, powerful, strong, direct. He's just a top player. A man who many feel could actually be. I've seen people talk about him being a replacement for Salah. I think, in terms of him being a replacement for Salah, yes, he could be a replacement for Salah in terms of playing where Salah plays, but, he could never truly be the replacement for Salah. You've got to replace Salah with an absolute unbelievably world-class player to come even close to Semenyo. Semenyo is a Ghanaian international player. Even though obviously he was born in Chelsea in England, he's obviously got Ghanaian citizenship through his family. Has got 32 caps for Ghana. But look, it's at Bournemouth that he's really made a name for himself, really, where he's kicked on his career. He started at Bristol City, he had loan spells at Bath, Newport, Sunderland, but it's Bournemouth where he has really kicked on, making 101 appearances for Bournemouth, scoring 28 goals in that time. His career total is 281 appearances, 61 goals. And at 25 years old, he's coming into the prime of his career. Now, look, when it was originally mentioned that Liverpool could be in for this player, who interested Manchester United, Spurs, Chelsea last summer, I think a lot of people thought this would be a summer thing. This would not happen anywhere near this January transfer window, especially after the reports from Fabrizio and from Luke Steele about Lewis Steele, about a quiet January. However, 2 very reputable sources today have come out with very interesting news about Antoine Semenyo. The first of one being David Ornstein, a man who, is the man in the know. He's kind of like, he is one of those guys that when he speaks on transfers, like Fabrizio, like Sasha Tavolieri, like Fabian Plattenberg, you pretty much listen. You listen to these guys. He says, this is what he said. He said, Bournemouth may be powerless to prevent Antoine Semenyo's sale in January. Contract includes a 65 million release clause available to all clubs, but must be triggered by the set date so Bournemouth get time to replace. Applies again in the summer at a lower price at the Athletic FC. So, some interesting bits to pull out of this one. First of all, the release clause, which is 65 million. Obviously, Semenyo signed a new deal in the summer just gone with Bournemouth. Now, if we look at this release clause that he signed with Bournemouth, it's obvious that that he wanted this put in so that if a club came in from a particular club that he was interested in, met this release clause, he could move on. It's interesting as well as a set date for this. So I think any business in terms of signing Semenyo would have to be done early in January to give Bournemouth chance to replace Semenyo later, obviously, or partway through that window. It's also interesting as well that that release clause reduces again in the summer for the player. It'd be interesting to see what that clause would reduce to. No mention of that in any of the sources so far. This was also backed up by Ben Jacobs as well, who put Antoine Semenyo's release clause is set at 65 million for January, as David Ornstein called. The clause first revealed in Talk Sport is not valued for the full duration of the window. and it will diminish this summer. The clause allowed Bournemouth to keep Semenyo heading into this season, so it appears that the way they got him to sign that new contract was by allowing him to put in this release clause. Although Bournemouth will fight to keep Semenyo in January, they are realistic and exit is possible given his rich form. Now, the reports that appear to be emanating is that Liverpool are very interested in the player, particularly for around 65 million, and see this as a realistic prospect for that January transfer window. Look, this would be a fantastic deal to get across the window in January. I think, especially given the fact that, I know Slot talked about having 6 attacking options, but, as we know, he doesn't really trust Federico Chiesa for whatever reason. He doesn't really trust Rio Ngamoa for whatever reason. So I think, a big money buy like Semenyo coming in, and it would really help Liverpool kick on again in January and really give us another option in that attacking area, and also I think would obviously come in towards the end of, but would certainly supplement, the fact that Mo Salah is away on AFCON duty with Egypt. I certainly hope there is truth in this one. I hope this is one that runs and runs, and Liverpool genuinely are interested. Now, there is other stories that are coming out of Bournemouth and from people close to Semenyo, saying that Semenyo favours a move to Liverpool over any other club, that Liverpool is the club that he wants to join, which could put Liverpool at an added advantage. Certainly, like I said, hope there is truth in that one, but good news nonetheless. Guys, let's talk about Florian Wirtz, but just before we do that, please obviously give me your opinions on Antoine Semenyo. Look, I'm not sitting here pretending to be in the know. I'm just calling on what David Ornstein said, what Ben Jacobs said. It may come to nothing. But look, what I want to know from you, what's your thoughts? Anyway, Florian Wirtz, I've got to say one thing, look, not a massive German national team fan, not a massive international football fan, but I've got to say, I do love that old school kit. Reminds me of the Italian 90 kit when they won the World Cup, but it's a nice kit, that, isn't it? A nice Adidas Germany national team kit. Anyway, Florian Wirtz has come in for a whole host of criticism from a number of sources in the media, from fans, from analysts. And look, you see opposition fans glorying in his so-called failure because they want him to fail. They can't stand the thought of him succeeding. And people hold his price tag over him, and it's not fair because, let's face it, he didn't decide the price tag. It is what it was decided between the two clubs. Anyway, Florian Wirtz had a fantastic game for Germany last night v Slovakia. And I know what people will say, it's only Slovakia, blah, blah, blah. But look, you can only beat what's in front of you. You can only play what is in front of you. And people would have criticised him had he had a poor game. He can't win in any circumstance. James Pearce, very reliable source, said special player Wirtz, difficult start to his LFC career, but so gifted. It's a case of when, not if, he lights up the Premier League. And I've got to say, I'm 100% with James Pearce on this one. It is when, not if. This is a good footballer. You don't become a bad footballer overnight. You don't lose your talent or your ability to play. He will come good. It's worth noting that Touchline here, this is from Touchline, Florian Wirtz's stats versus Slovakia tonight: 2 assists, including a fantastic one for Leroy Sané, 94% passing accuracy, 6 chances created, 3 of those been big chances, 9 passes into the final third. And this really follows on from what he's been doing this season. Florian has been creating a lot of good chances. It's just that they haven't been put in the back of the net. He realistically could be sitting on 4, 5, 6, 7 assists now in the Premier League had it been not for some woeful, awful finishing by people within Liverpool's first team. So look, it really is not his problem, not his fault. Look, I've got no doubt in my mind this player will come good. I've got no doubt in my mind that he will perform at some point in the near future for Liverpool. And I think, going into this next crucial tranche of games that we've got upcoming, we need Florian Wirtz on his best form and at his very best. These are eminently winnable games. These are games where Liverpool could really kick on in the Premier League and in the Champions League as well, and really, put a marker down going forward. Look, I'm not saying the title's there to be won. I think realistically, you've got to look at Arsenal and Man City as being prime candidates. But come out of these run of next 4 or 5 Premier League games with 4 or 5 straight wins, it gives you confidence. confidence builds, breeds success, and let's face it, winning becomes a habit. Anything is truly possible. Guys, I'd love to know your thoughts on the couple of stories we've covered this morning in the news video. Obviously, keep your eyes open for more content throughout the day. And obviously, can we keep a contact out for any of our live podcasts coming up as well. Guys, if you want to make sure you never miss out, best way, subscribe, and then obviously ring the bell. Thanks for watching the Liverpool FC Journal. If you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I'll catch you on the next one.